Happy Thanksgiving. And this year, one of the things I'm thankful for is the end of inflation. Let's take a look and I'll show you what I see. Okay, let's talk the end of inflation. Here's what you need to know. Most important thing to know, October headline inflation came in at 0% month over month. I'm pulling this directly from the inflation report from last week, but essentially what you see here, this is the last 12 months of headline inflation prints, and what you see is October came in at 0%. This is the best reading we've had in over a year. And it's not just a 1-month trend. If you look at the 12-month trend in both headline inflation in blue or core inflation, which removes the volatile food and energy here in maroon, what you can see is the 12-month rate of inflation has been declining pretty much in a straight line for the last 12 months. Headline is somewhere around maybe 3.25. Core inflation is somewhere around 4%. This is great progress in a short amount of time. What does it mean? What are the implications of this? I am calling the end of the 2020 inflationary episode. Started with COVID lockdowns, moved into supply chains getting jammed up, added to it fuel to the fire with the government providing excess stimulus while everyone was at home. Then we moved into the economy running too hot, the most rapid, some of the strongest interest rate increases that we've seen pretty much since the 80s. And then finally, where we are today, this disinflationary trend, I'm saying it's all over. The 2020 inflationary episode has ended as a result of the data that we got in October. Doesn't mean November's data can't come in positive, doesn't mean any of that. But I think that whole process, this whole journey that we've been on is finally over. Here's the second piece of information you need to know. They're almost two sides of the same coin. So inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. And what we're seeing right now, the end of inflation is too many goods chasing not enough money. And we're starting to see that. Retailers are starting to warn us about consumer spending. And when I think about consumer spending, when I think about the health of the consumer or retail spending, I like to think about it in terms of supply and demand. So let's take a look at both sides of the equation. For supply, I'm going to use new credit card delinquencies. So why I'm using this as a stand-in for supply, I don't actually know how much money everybody's got. But what I do know is if you had money, you probably aren't getting delinquent on your credit cards. That's probably the last thing that you're doing if you had, plenty of cash. And so if we look at where credit card delinquencies are, this is at some of the highest rates we've seen since 2015. So this is above pre-pandemic trends. And more importantly, the delinquency rate in terms of credit cards is increasing rapidly. What this tells me is the supply of money, of consumers being able to spend, we're probably tapped out. We probably don't have too much in terms of a supply of money. The other side of the equation is demand. And what we just saw today from Nordstrom sales missed, and in their guidance, they cited ongoing uncertainty and a softening consumer spend. So you may have a situation where, maybe credit cards is just an outlier. Maybe people aren't using their credit cards. They're just spending cash. Maybe they're doing debit cards. So it's good to check both sides. Supply of money as measured by delinquencies tells us that consumers are probably running out of money. Demand for goods, as we're seeing in terms of retailers, and it's not just Nordstrom. We've probably had 5 retailers now warn us about softening consumer spend, weakening demand. And so this is part of why I think we're at inflation's end. There's too many goods, not enough money. And generally, you can't get inflation out of that. The implications of this is that the economy is cooling. How far will it go? What does it all mean? Well, inflation is behind us. That one's clear. I'm telling it to you right now. The inflationary episode is over. As a result of the cooling inflation and the slowing economy, that's the demand side, rate cuts are ahead of us. And I've been talking about this on our Friday videos, but basically one of the things that you're going to want to prepare for is interest rates to start coming down. That's going to stoke demand and increase economic activity, hopefully, but that's what's coming. That's what's in the future. I would not say more inflation is coming in the future. The landing. You've heard a lot of economic prognosticators talk about, are we going to have a hard landing? Are we going to have a soft landing? Some people said we're having a hard landing, and then they threw in the towel and said, no, we're not. It's all of that. That entire discussion has been premature. We haven't even been close to the runway. You know, if the model is an airplane coming to land on the runway, we haven't been close to it. We finally touched the runway. And so we can determine whether we're having a hard or soft landing. That all happens in 2024. That's still ahead of us. Up until this point, we have merely been descending, getting close to the runway. So definitely something to watch out for. That's something that I'm going to be thinking as we get into next year. Are we having a soft landing, which means a shallow recession? Are we having a hard landing, which means something more brutal? And that's what I'm going to be thinking about as we get to next year. So there you go. What am I thankful for? I'm thankful for the end of inflation. We'll see you on our Friday video. Take care.